Right to left, Shamit Shome. Number 90, the Canadian GA. On the right side, Evan Pankin and Ethan Cutler will partner each other in midfield. And Chris Nanko out of Syracuse gets to start this game. And a two-man forward line, Jorge Gomez-Sanchez, who scored in the last game from Temple, alongside Nathan Regis up top, who went out with an injury in the last game. And so he gets an opportunity to get a start. So Doyle, a little formation change, a couple moves around. That Team Chaos lineup, who else besides Aubrey do you focus in on?
Ethan Cutler a little bit because he's a forward who's playing now in central midfield. It'll be interesting to see if he can help Pankin out and maybe keep their shape a little bit. It's a move that Jurgen Klinsmann would appreciate, playing him out of position like this, but sometimes you want to see if a guy can adjust.
On the blue side, Suli Denke with that ball down the left side. Team Copa in blue going right to left. Suli Denke at left back after starting in central midfield. The center back pairing, Joe Rimstad and Lalas Abubakar. Aaron Jones getting the start this game at right back. Then the holding midfield, Dominic Oduro on the ball right here, a youth international who started the last game at right back. In front of him, Kwame Owuah and Suhaib Deflawi. In the attacking midfield, Russell Cicerone starting once again on the left side. Connor Maloney gets a start this time on the right side. And one of the big names, Andrew, that we talked about in the first game, Adonijah Reed up top, Canadian GA, only 17 years old.
Yeah, a young guy who showed well in that first game, especially when he was allowed to drop back into those holes in midfield, playing more of an underneath striker in that sense. That's when he looked his best. He was able to get his head up, run at players. He'll be going against two big, tall, physical center backs in DeVries and Aubrey in this game. How will he respond? How will he change his movement? Will he find a way to drop in and get on the ball? That's a big question mark, but Doyle's right. Aubrey's got a test with Reed in there. He was able to get past players. He was able to set up some good scoring opportunities for Team Copa despite them not having the best of days on the attacking side. But defensively for Copa, there's a player I'm looking at this game, and that's Abubakar. He moved from center back to defensive midfield in the second half of day one. Didn't look as good at defensive midfield.
Yeah, Abubakar getting beat there with that ball, and Regis' touch too long. David Goss, Matt Doyle, Andrew Reeby here at the StubHub Center, streaming on MLSsoccer.com. Our second day of Combine coverage here for the 2017 MLS Player Combine. We've got one more day of games, but two games coming up today. Currently, Team Chaos in orange, going left to right. Team Copa in blue, going right to left. Will be followed immediately after with Team Control versus Team Chaos in the second matchup. Team Control versus Team Tango. We are ready to go. The sun's shining. It's rained all day. Heavy rain in the morning. Lighter since then. And finally the sun poking out for this one as these players get ready to go. Work down the left side. And Dominic Oduro dropping back from midfield. He makes the clearance. Oduro, a right-to-dream player out of the Manchester City Academy who played right back in the last game.
And we saw why Lalas Abubakar has moved up the board a little bit right there. He was isolated against Gomez Sanchez on the flank. And as a center back, you saw his quickness and agility shutting down that cross. You know that he can play in isolation. You know that he can do some of the emergency defensive work that defenders are always asked to do. This is why the guy, I think, is probably a top 10 pick.
And what coach will be looking for as well is that ability to play out of the back. We saw better ability on the ball than we thought we might in day one, and that's why the defensive midfield move was made in some part. To see how he looked there, but also to see how he would do with pressure around him, with decisions having to happen in quicker time, and with cleaner passes needing to be made. Did not thrive there, but he has an opportunity in this game against two forwards to see something a little bit different and show off those 1v1 defensive skills.
Denke has the ball taken off him by Shome. Now Cutler pushing it wide left. Kyle Bjornthen out of Seattle University coming forward. He's playing under his head coach, Peter Fewing, Seattle University head coach. Bo Ashoni, the head coach, East Tennessee State of Team Copa. His side pushing forward now down the right wing. Deflawi, another one of the youth internationals out of Denmark.
And that is what Deflawi showed us in the first game as well. He gets the ball, his head is down. He does not hit an early ball, even though it was there for him.
Owuah with the ball played in. It's cleared away. Reed trying to put the pressure on. Now Cutler, a chance to clear.
And physically, Reed, despite his age, showed an ability to get separation in that first game. And you saw it there. Brandon Aubrey looked like he had some time to maybe bring the ball to the back, get his head up, find a pass. Reed's pressure immediate, almost causes a turnover.
Now Reed in the last game the GA Canadian youth player, as Dominic Oduro goes to ground. No call made. He started at center forward, then you seem to like him a little bit more, Andrew, when he dropped deeper and played in more of that number 10 role.
Well, we saw Mafeka get a much better opportunity there as well. Lindo Mafeka, the USF player. When he was in the hole, he looked very, very good. He was able to face players up, get on the dribble, get on the ball, find those passes into space. Once Donijah Reed got in that place, he did the same thing, and we're looking for a little bit of final product from him. Teams know physically he can do it. They know he scored goals in League One Ontario, was a really, really good goal scorer there, although the level is a little bit of a mystery. They want to see it against these players. They want to see him get to that 18, make good decisions, and have the final ball, maybe even the finish, to prove that he belongs in the first round.
Chris Nanko with that shot. Canadian from Brampton out of Syracuse, 7 goals last year, has now a chance for Cicerone to get into the box. It's blocked away and cleared finally for Team Chaos. Shamit Shom now able to hold off DeFlowey and get the ball cleared up the line.
And that's what we expect from Russell Cicerone, just thinking the game 1 or 2 steps ahead of the other guys out there. That is his rep. Would have liked for his sake to see him finish that one, but there's always room for a smart soccer player.
Clearance made there by Pankin, and the tackle falling to Ethan Cutler's feet, Colgate University alumni. Russell Cicerone, one of the question marks around him was he played at a small school, maybe the competition level. He was dominant for all 4 years, was a starter for all 4 years. As that long shot goes just wide off the foot of Pankin, the Notre Dame Irishman. And Cicerone, I think, one of the players that everyone here was impressed with on the first day.
He had a good first half hour. He showed some elusiveness. The final product needs to be there, the ability to create separation. That's what a lot of coaches are looking for with all of these attackers, and that's why guys like Daniel Johnson and Zico Lewis and Jonathan Lewis all stood out.
Team Chaos coming out in this one in a 4-4-2. Last game started in a 4-2-3-1. A little chaotic for them in those opening 15 or 30 minutes, going down 3-0 quite quickly to the team in white. Team control that we'll see later this afternoon. Trying to come out a bit steadier here today, show better for their players, especially those defensive players that you mentioned. Brandon Aubrey, one of them, who are looking to move up that draft board. Ball down the right wing. Connor Maloney in a chase with Bjornthen. Maloney comes away with it. His cross blocked away. Connor Maloney, a quiet first day out there on that right wing for Team Copa in the second half. So Andrew mentioned the keys for these players in the second day. What have you seen in the past years and the difference maybe in how coaches assess day 1 to day 2, how coaches maybe are affected by what they're seeing, and how players can shift their
honestly,
stock?
In past years, they've been too busy making trades and deals on day 2 to put too much weight into it. Because, look, these guys are playing their second game in 48 hours. The legs are a little heavy. The nerves are still there. Let's see what Cicerone does in this overlap.
Reed losing the ball, falls to the feet of Oduro.
And the one thing you do get to see with Reed now that he's up top is his ability to play against these bigger players. When space is tight, when they're able to get a foot on him, kick him a little bit. We know he can separate in the open field, but can he play in tight spaces against players who are physically stronger than he is?
Abu Bakar into the feet of Maloney. The layoff to DeFlowey. DeFlowey plays it out wide right. Jones coming forward. Clemson Tiger. He can celebrate a national championship for his college football team. Last time college football will be mentioned.
Should we give a shout-out to Stu Holden for that one?
A long ball over the top here first. Nanko able to find a teammate, and the shot blocked at the last second. Gomez Sanchez looking for his second goal of the competition.
Once again, emergency defending there from Abu Bakar. He's really thrived in those positions so far. But the ball, Shamit Shom with the vision, with the technical ability to hit that big switch, caught out at right back was Jones, but a good block there from Abu Bakar.
Shom coming into this competition, coming into this player combine, he was a player that had already played over 1,000 minutes professionally in Edmonton. A lot of expectations for him. Struggled at times in central midfield, moved out wide right. What does that mean that coaches are looking at? What does he have to do today?
Well, I think they want to see if he can be a difference maker in the way that maybe Jackson Ewell was in the first game. And look, he does have those pro minutes, but he didn't put up a lot of numbers. And there's still a question mark as to what his best position is. Can you play a guy who didn't score a goal in NASL as a number 8 in MLS? You probably can't. So I think they're trying to figure out a little bit what he is The brain is there. The will is there. It's a question of his tactical and technical skill set.
Regis dropping deep. He and Gomez Sanchez out here on this right wing, trying to go back. I remind you, it's rained almost the entire day here, so the field's slick out at StubHub Center. Oh, a nice clean surface for these players to play on. As Cutler is able to get around to Flowey. That pass just a bit too long. A lot of space open here in central midfield for both sides to pick their head up and work. Kwame Awua, who played in the last game at left back, playing in central midfield this time. Cross comes in. It's headed away at the near post by Aubrey. And Shom now cleaning up. We have an injury down in midfield. It looks like.
Is that a Duro?
Yeah, it looked like he took a little bit of a knock to the head there and kind of a 50-50 over near the sideline here. And you saw him look up and say, hey, what happened? Ends up going down a little ways away. Unfortunate for him right now. Yeah. He looked much more comfortable in central midfield than he did at outside back in day one. He's had some nice touches, a little bit of good vision. He's back up. Looks like he's going to be fine.
A tough trip for him. He went home to Ghana for Christmas, flew to Denmark to get his visa paperwork done, and then landed here on Saturday, directly from Denmark to L.A. And that's part of this experience for a lot of these players. Not ideal conditions, never really playing with a lot of the players out there on the field, and then forced to go in and try and play at a high level. Regis picks this ball up on the left wing, lays it back to Nanko.
Got to be able to deal with travel if you want to play in MLS.
Nanko gets the battle away. He gets a shot. It's blocked. Gomez Sanchez now looking for a second opportunity. His left-footed shot is blocked away. And now it gets to the feet of DeFlowey finally. A tackle made off the feet of Kwame Awua on that right wing. Just north of 10 minutes played here so far. This is the second day of play for these teams. They'll get one more opportunity on Thursday. Those games a few minutes shorter, 40-minute halves. This game, the normal 45 minutes halves, as Shom goes by Denke. Goes to ground, no call made, and Shom able to keep possession. Finds the feet of Gomez Sanchez. Gomez Sanchez now the right-footed cross curled in. Crashing Pankin, it's headed away.
Lalas Abubakar once again, the man on the spot.
Team Chaos looking to break through for the opening goal here today. They scored one goal late on to cut their deficit to 4-1. That cross is blocked over there on the near side by Jones.
Impressive start here from Colton Storm, the right back for Team Chaos. He's hit a couple nice switches, including that one right there. He's gotten up to support possession pretty well, and he was able to stop Adonijah Reed that one-time 1v1. He will be one of the first right backs off the board.
And we saw Aduiachim as well, a player that you've mentioned in that position. Fullback, not the strongest of this class, so we've seen multiple center backs actually have to play out of position for a half or so far in this player combine. But
if you can imagine, we're a little short of left backs. What a shot.
Also important to note those center backs perhaps quote-unquote playing out of position, and that's their collegiate positioning. But it may not be their professional positioning. Right. So you're giving an opportunity for these coaches to see how they'll react in a little bit of a wider area, different angles on the passes, different defensive scenarios they have to deal with.
We're going to talk in the second half with Coach Ziggy Schmidt, a multiple MLS Cup champion, former college soccer coach as well, as he's at this combine watching over the players. He'll be part of Friday's MLS SuperDraft stream on MLSsoccer.com, 3 p.m. Eastern time, where these players will learn their fate. You can, of course, go to MLSsoccer.com for any news or notes coming out of this draft. Sam Stejskal, the Adam Schefter of Major League Soccer, as Regis hits the crossbar on that shot. He's covering everything here. Nathan Regis got injured in the last game. We didn't get to see much from him. He absolutely lit up Division II soccer at Pfeiffer University, going over 30 goals in a season, Andrew, and that the first flash we've seen from him.
Yeah, beautiful little chip. Certainly one that you don't expect to go in, and the goalkeeper is going to be upset if it does. But a great pass from Schmidt Shom to put him into space there. I would have liked to see him perhaps take that defender on, try to get some separation. Maybe not go for something quite so ambitious, but very nearly scores there.
DeFlowey drops it back. Jake McGuire in goal. Player almost beaten by that shot. So Regis now makes the run down the middle. The cross cut out. Regis falling on the concrete behind the goal in the last game, and he tried to soldier through it, come back in the game, but was forced off the field. So it's good to see him get back out here. For players like that, Doyle, for players that played maybe against lower competition throughout, how much does the draft affect coaches? Because you said on Extra Time Radio yesterday, trust the tape.
Right.
But for players where you're not quite sure what the tape means, how much does it affect what they're doing?
It affects them a lot. We saw that with Richie Marquez, who came in as an unknown a few years back and ended up playing himself into a draft pick, and now, of course, he's starting for the Philadelphia Union. Tesho Akindele, another one. Those guys have a little bit more stock put in their performances here than the guys from ACC schools or Big Ten or Pac-12 schools. Those guys have been scouted.
Russell Cicerone doing work down the wing. Schoen coming over to help Storm. Rimstad's header will roll out. Colton Storm recruited originally to UNC as a center midfielder. He was a USU 17 player, shifted to that right back position. UNC, we've talked about a little, Doyle, rich in central midfield with Chicago Fire Academy players who may move into MLS. And we've talked about the homegrown setup, the academy setup. How have you seen it affecting the draft, and how have you seen it affecting how coaches look at this?
Well, teams with good youth setups are much more willing to move their picks or to move out of the draft entirely, just like at LA, which is fine. If you have that pipeline, you don't need to hit a home run. But I think the thing that we've seen with teams like Sporting KC, with teams like the Colorado Rapids and DC United, is that the draft is still a super useful tool for finding not just squad players, but guys who can make a difference. And I think that, obviously, as Andrew said yesterday, or on Sunday rather, it's the top 5 where you usually find those guys. But player development is a real thing. And if you could take a guy with the 20th pick and stash him in your USL team for a year or two, and you come out with a guy who can give you 1,500 minutes in MLS per year, that adds value to your team, because it's not just 1 through 11. It is 1 through 30. That's how you win.
Last year, DC United taking a man named Julian Boucher with the 11th pick. Anyone out there, an ETR fan, drink now? I've mentioned it, but Doyle will be over the next 20 minutes or so, we know.
And we're talking about players who came in and we're taking second round on, and there's a ton from early drafts, but you're also talking about in Sporting Kansas City, for instance, a guy like Graham Zusi taken in the second round. It took him 3 years to break in that team, and we all know what he did after that. He became a U.S. national team player. He's now an all-star, a best 11. He was an MVP candidate a few years ago. There is opportunity for teams. It is not a science, the draft. It is an art form, and some teams have the instincts, have the scouting networks, and sometimes the luck to pick up players that will affect their teams for years to come.
If you go to MLSsoccer.com right now, you can look at which teams have been most successful in getting minutes out of their draft picks. A great piece written by a certain Ben Bear. So go on, MLSsoccer.com. Check that out, of course, after these games. The Donajai Reed has that ball taken off his foot, been very active so far up top in this one. Both these teams, Team Chaos and Team Copa, still looking for the opening goal of this game. These teams both falling to a loss on the first day of play, looking much more even and settled so far in the second day of action.
Must be said, shape is a little bit in the eye of the beholder right now. You see a lot of players going where they want. DeFlowey doing what he wants, it looks like. Shamit Shom has switched sides. This is not it's not exactly what the lineup sheet says, and some guys are trying to find their spot on the field right now. Nanko has switched sides as well.
Nanko one-on-one with Denki.
That was not textbook 1v1 defending from Denki.
Denki, we have to say, most of his career played at center back. Good layoff here in the box. The shot. McGuire makes the save. And now Abu Bakar trying to clear. Colton Storm closes that passing angle. Reed with the block, and it goes out for a corner kick.
No play made on the ball by our own Stephen Keel behind the goal right there. Look, Denki has gotten exposed in 2 straight games now, and I think Nanko will keep going right at him. There's a nice little layoff, good vision from Regis as well.
A good move there, a Peligroso move for Team Chaos, of course, up in the box. Regis has looked dangerous so far. Good decision-making from him in the box. Corner kick opportunity now coming, the left-footed service. Curled into the near post, headed away by Maloney. Shom with the volley, and that goes wide right. McGuire safely watching it go.
Trying to get the body shape right on that one. Didn't quite do it, but you'll see these players attempt to take those opportunities as well. And I think we've already seen some heavy legs at times, especially on the defensive side, some of the recoveries, some of the runs that you have to make in order to shut down some of the service. But still early in the game, and I expect we'll see a lot of subs at halftime as well.
Maloney lays that ball out. For Team Copa, Nazim Bartman, Marcus Epps, Lindo Mafeka, all out of University of South Florida that started in the last game on the bench for this one. Aduro follows Jorge Gomez-Sanchez down the line and makes the tackle, wins the goal kick. We have Ja'Cory Hayes, who started in the last game, and Brian Wright, Iman Mafi on the bench as well, and Jeremy Ebobise. Out of Duke, he signed with Major League Soccer, so skipped this season in college. He played on loan with the Charleston Battery, scoring 1 goal in 5 appearances there. He also scored 9 goals with the USU 20 team. Doyle, you think he'll get about a solid 120 minutes or so today?
My guess is that we do not see him at all. Look, I think Minnesota are listening to offers for the first pick. I think the offer would have to be very good for them to take it.
Bobise, a 6-foot forward out of Duke. A lot of people's consensus #1 pick coming into this combine. But as Doyle said, it's day 2. Everyone's gotten a chance to settle in, a chance to talk a little bit. And now is when moves and picks start flying around.
Watch the marking here. Team Chaos had some trouble off corner kicks against Team Control in day 1.
Denke and Abu Bakar making their way up the field, as is Rimstad. Maloney's cross to the far post, headed down. It goes safely wide. 22 minutes gone so far here in the first game of our second day of action. Team Chaos versus Team Copa here in the opening game at StubHub Center. Team Control versus Team Tango coming up in the second game directly after this. We'll be joined by Ziggy Schmidt in the second half of this one. And then Matt Doyle will return to us in the second game.
A roster rotation, lineup rotation. You don't want to tire your guys out. It's a long day.
Well, and coaches want to see him play different positions, see different players move around. Gomez-Sanchez works into the box. His cross cut back. Intercepted and cleared by Rimstad. Rimstad, a late addition to this competition, or to this combine. Getting the opportunity to start next to Abu Bakar. Abu Bakar out of Ghana. Went to school in Ghana. Decided to take that route over going professionally immediately. And then eventually ending up at Dayton as Colton Storm gets forward once again. His cross blocked. And now Denke able to recover. And he puts that one out for a corner kick.
Colton Storm continues to show well. That was also very good vision from Regis, who's had 2 nice little layoffs here. Both those guys, I think, are helping their stock today.
Storm, of course, one of the biggest parts of his stock is the fact that he has a C and S tattooed on his left shoulder, and the S is in a lightning bolt for Storm.
Creativity.
He's
a creative player, yes?
That's the type of marketing move that a team can't pass up on.
You always got to respect someone who understands his brand.
The next Michael Jordan, Air Jordan logo of Major League Soccer. Corner kick coming here for Team Chaos. Floated to the far post. Initial header won by Oduro, and it goes out for another corner kick. It'll be Evan Pankin to go over and take this one. Pankin starting 2 straight games here in central midfield. A Notre Dame alumni. His right-footed cross curled in. This one won by Denke and out. Team Chaos working the ball around the 18. That cross floats over everyone. A few players playing in different positions, a few players getting starts that didn't. Opening 25 minutes so far for you two. Has anyone stood out? Anyone continuing good work from day one or looking better here in day two?
Look, I like Dominic Oduro in central midfield much more than I did at outside back. His instincts there are a lot better. I think Abubakar, as we've said, has continued to show well. Of course, the commentators cursed there with a poor touch from him outside. That's from Team Copa. As for Team Chaos, a little bit better from Shamit Shom, although still quiet, not dictating the game much out of that central midfield position. And Brandon Aubrey so far hasn't been tested, but I want to see him in 1v1 situations. I want to see Adonijah Reed get on the ball and test him, although Reed has moved out wide now to get on the ball more.
Reed and Cicerone swapping positions. Reed now floating into the box. Tries to cut it back for Cicerone. The left-footed shot hits softly and rolls wide.
Weight of passing was something that Reed did very well in day one, and you saw it there a little bit. Maybe a little bit more on that allows Cicerone to get faced up, get another touch, get a little bit of separation. But you like that technical ability from the young man.
A very good run from Cicerone as well to get behind that back line. And Brandon Aubrey lost a little bit. Did not see that run coming.
Adonijah Reed just 5'6", playing up top. And now we have a special guest, a special addition to our broadcast booth, as we'll be joined by a number of guests throughout the day. And it's Peter Walton, the head of pro here at StubHub Center. And amongst the many things coming in 2017 for pro that we'll ask you about, we want to start with, you're here because VAR is being tested on these matches for IFAB in Major League Soccer. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are working on?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. The Combine games are an ideal opportunity for us to test the equipment, the broadcasting equipment, the communication equipment, and of course get our referees exposed to the principles of VAR, video assistant refereeing. And we're here today with a group of officials. It's their first step into it, and at the moment things are going reasonably well, although of course it's a long journey.
This Peter Walton, the head of pro, and as he mentioned, here to test out VAR. Reed gets down the box and his cross blocked. It'll go out for a corner kick. You used VAR in live games in USL this season. You've tested it over the last few years, live and behind the scenes. Where is it at this stage in terms of testing?
So IFAB have decreed that we should have a 2-year testing period, in which we're part way through, and that length of time is chosen because it's got so many layers that we need to iron out. In terms of where we are now, we're in the process of educating all my officials, all the officials on the pro list, so we have an understanding of the principles behind VAR, with a view of bringing it into Major League Soccer, hopefully sometime during the course of 2017.
Certainly something to look out for there. What are the challenges? What are the things you're working through, Peter, when you go through a testing process like this?
So, first of all, you've got to adhere to the principles, and people will think that this is the panacea, this will get every decision right. It's not meant for that. It's meant to correct clear and obvious errors made by the match officials. And I'll cite the Peru-Brazil game in the summer last season. A clear handball, clearly got wrong. It's that sort of decision that we're looking for. There'll still be subjective decisions. Was it a foul or wasn't a foul? And that's part of the passion of the game. But VAR is meant to iron out those clear and obvious mistakes being made by match officials.
What about something like in MLS Cup 2015, where I think the ball had clearly crossed the touchline and play was allowed to continue? Is it for that as well?
So that's a great point, and the answer to that is yes. That ball had clearly gone out and should have been stopped at that moment. What, of course, this testing phase has given us is how long do you take that play back for? So we're now looking at when the attacking team takes possession of the ball, and that possession leads to the decision that you're adjudicating on. So there's you can't just go back to the start of the game and see what went wrong. You've got to go back to a moment in time when that attack was deemed to start. That MLS Cup final, we'll go back to that.
What's the feedback that you've gotten from the officials that have had the chance to work with it and the officials as they're learning?
Yeah, so look, at the end of the day, the officials want to get the decisions correct. And if it means technology is going to help them, then so be it. And to a man and to a girl, they've said, yes, we'll accept it, we'll have it in, because the vast majority of decisions, they're still making themselves. But in case of those key match incidents, we just want to make sure we're correct in what we're doing. There's a great belief that this will assist our match officials in the long term.
So the VAR is a fifth official that's at the match, sitting along with a bank of TVs, watching the game in the ear of the head official. How's the process going, the communication going between those two? Is it that they then advise the head official about the change, or does the VAR referee make a call similar to the linesman?
So at the end of the day, the VAR is, as you said, just a fifth official. It's always the referee's decision. Even when the linesman indicates that something, it's the referee who makes the decision to stop the game or to continue. Likewise with the VAR, if he sees something or she sees something, she'll bring that to the attention of the match referee. Match referee makes the decision, and that's a very fundamental principle that we work into. The VAR is just but part of his team.
Let me ask you this: why VAR? Why not just station an official behind each goal, like I think we see in the Champions League and Europa League? That seems to have cut down on a lot of, diving in the box, and a lot of the stuff that I think fans don't want to see.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the assistant referees behind the goal have been very proactive rather than reactive. They've been proactive where players know there's another set of eyes on them. This is just an extension to that, and we're using what people who can sit in their homes and watch. Why can't the referee see the same view? And therefore we're introducing the technology of the broadcasting feeds so that we're not the only people who don't see a particular play. We are part of that.
How much interface is there with broadcasters? Because obviously angle determines what decisions you're able to make. It has to be clear and obvious. Do you have interface with the folks that will be broadcasting? How do you influence that? What would you need from them to do your job right?
Okay, Andy, that's a great question. Each venue will be conducted with a minimum standard required for a VAR process. We'll have possibly 8 cameras, each positioned at the same areas within each stadium, given the angles of play, so we cover each angle. And broadcasters are part of that setup. Broadcasters being asked which angles provide the best degree. So you will see the reverse angle on the far side. You will see the offside line. You will see the camera from behind the goal, given an angle that the referee or the match officials will not see. But broadcasters are very much part of this testing phase.
Now, outside of VAR, head of pro, a new season coming up. There's always things that the referees are talking about, things that you're trying to focus on, things that you're trying to key on as Nanko's cross comes in and it's knocked away by Abu Bakar. What is the focus for 2017? What have you guys been discussing?
So 2017 really is just an extension to where we were in 2016. Officials are not judged on whether or not they get a free kick correct or a throw-in correct. They are judged on these key match-changing incidents, and Pro is very much homed in on getting these key match incidents correct, such as send-offs, such as penalty kicks, and those situations. And that's something that, as a team of support staff, we are very much focused on for the 2017. There are some specifics that we'll be looking at. Dissent towards match officials. We think that's not really what the public should be seeing. But apart from that, we are focused on key match incidents.
You meet with players before every season and try to set some of these ground rules and make sure they understand what the emphases are. What's the best way to message those things to players? What do players react to? What do they ask you for in those meetings?
Yeah, they're very good meetings, by the way, because they're being held in a situation where it's not pressurised of a match day. They're much more relaxed. We are much more relaxed, and there's a great relationship being built. And we in fact carried out a tour of each club during the course of last season, not just at the start of the season, to continue that relationship building. We learn an awful lot from players. We learn from the coaches, their frustrations, and we can measure and monitor our own performances against that. But what we are able to do is to agree on various principles. We'll agree on where the players draw the line. And again, it works both ways. Of course, match days and when the pressure's on and the frustration's up, sometimes it doesn't account for. But primarily we are looking to establish greater relationships and an understanding between match officials and the people who actually play the game.
Peter Walton, the head of pro here in the United States and Canada, alongside us, the head of refereeing. They're working on VAR here today and throughout the rest of the Combine at the StubHub Center. We know that one of the big parts for pro recently has been the larger involvement, more professional refs, more refs that are full-time refs. Is there any additions that we can see coming into 2017?
So what we're seeing is you'll see pretty much the same roster, but there may well be changes within that roster. There are a few of my referees now who are able to commit to a full-time contract, which means they can have more education, more training, more recovery time, and they'll be better equipped for match days. So that's something we're principal on. The other thing, of course, is that our referees are much more fitter than they were, yesteryear, and therefore they can actually perform on more games. So we don't necessarily need more referees, but we just need those referees to become, more quality referees.
One big question from fans, and I'm sure coaches as well, is along the evaluation process. Can you tell us how that works from week to week, from game to game, from season to season, how they're judged, how that feedback is provided, what you've seen in those situations? Has that been a conduit to help improvement?
I mean, would you believe that all our officials, assistants and match referees are appraised on every game, and that appraisal is very, very intense. Every event in the game is analysed, feedback is given to them on a weekly basis, and overall it must be probably the most analysed job going, I would think.
How has the growth of USL and the amount of games happening in this league affected the way that you've been able to observe referees or referees' careers?
Look, it's absolutely great. We need competition, we need competitive games, we need meaningful games so that players can expand and get better, and likewise so officials can be observed and looked at during competitive games. The more professional games there are in the US and in Canada, the better it will be for the progress and the development of our match officials, as indeed it will be for players.
Peter Walton of Pro, thank you so much for joining us. Is there any player that stood out to you that you'd like to recommend?
Look, I just happen to like the number 44 for the blue side. He seems a decent player to me, but hey, I'm just a referee, so what do I know?
Well, hopefully he'll come in the league and get a lot of fouls called against him for him. Peter Walton, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck, and of course, stick to MLSsoccer.com. A lot of changes happening with VAR, refereeing coming to Major League Soccer over the year. Peter Walton will be a part of it, and we've had him on Extra Time Radio before. Andrew will continue to have him on. A lot of interesting stuff changing, a lot of interesting stuff going on in the refereeing world.
Yeah, VAR is one that I think a lot of people are paying close attention to, and of course tested out in USL in some live situations last year, and you want the right decisions to be made in those big game-changing moments, as Peter said, and we saw that in the playoffs as well. Sporting Kansas City still not happy about what happened in that game against the Sounders, and you can see how that can affect long-term the playoffs. It can affect the way jobs are distributed as far as players go, coaches go. It can affect careers, and you want to get as much right as possible, and certainly PRO doing the best they can.
I'm going to do my best Alexi Lawless here and say that human error is part of the game. I am not a fan of video replay in just about any sport other than, I guess, tennis. And I hope that this is something that everybody who uses it approaches it with the idea that less is more.
Yeah, and I think, as we get ready for this free kick for Team Chaos, learning about it, you hear that they don't want to take away the human element. They just want to maybe, like Andrew was saying, in that play for Sporting KC, a controversial play, a close play, the clear and obvious ones, the crossing of the line. As DeFries steps up, and he rips that shot, the center back
Kiwi.
6'3"
center backs standing over that set piece. Both these guys, DeFries and Aubrey, take set pieces for their teams, and DeFries does have a cannon there.
Brandon Aubrey, 9 goals this season as a center back, 3 the year before, mainly those in set pieces, but trying to get rid of those. Did the ball cross the line or not, which I think to people is less interesting and controversial than does the referee deem that a hard foul? Does the referee deem that an inappropriate challenge, things like that? But moving forward, it should be interesting to watch. David Goss, Matt Doyle, and Andrew Wiebe here for the second day of coverage at the 2017 MLS Player Combine. Ziggy Schmidt will join us in the second half. We'll have the opportunity to ask him about VAR and most likely every other thing that he's ever thought about, because me and Andrew Wiebe are nerds.
We are going to milk him. We're going to get all the information you want. And if you want more, feel free to tweet at us, Andrew_Wiebe, Empire Goss, at MLS Analyst, if you want to heckle Matt or, get a good question in as well. We want to hear from you out there.
Doyle actually doesn't have a real name. It says on his ID now, MLS Analyst, an armchair analyst. We have an armchair set up in the booth for him to relax in at halftime. Another free kick here, about 5 minutes left to play. I asked you guys midway through this first half, but who's really stood out to you? A 0-0 game, and sometimes that makes it tough to see, but there's a lot of guys here. You guys are watching their movement off the ball, different things like that. What stood out to you?
I'm going to agree with Peter Walton that Lalas Abubakar continues to be maybe the most impressive central defender at this camp. I think that DeVries has had a very nice first half, including a couple of moments where he looked quicker than he did on day one. I think Aubrey's going to hit this.
Brandon Aubrey gets his chance with the right foot. He blasts his over the top.
Stephen Keel ducks out of the way again. I think that, for me, the star of this half has been Colton Storm. He has been so composed. I think we've seen him make every defensive play he's had to. He hasn't given the ball away at all. He's looked good athletically in terms of recovery speed. And we also saw him slip inside one time and play a runner through. I think he has, he doesn't have the raw athleticism that Aduiacham and Nerwinski do, but he looks to have something upstairs. His feet are pretty good as well. He's a guy who I think people will be noticing.
We'll see Reagan Dunk in that second game as well, another right back at the University of Denver that a lot of people really like. But you go back to Colton Storm. He's been matched up against Reed here for much of this first half. That's a matchup that GMs, coaches will be looking at closely for both those players to see how they respond. The one thing I'll say about Aubrey and DeVries taking free kicks in this match is that they probably shouldn't plan on doing that in their professional career. That's not going to be a role, at least in MLS, that they find themselves in too often, but the ability to strike the ball, some technical ability showing off a little bit. For
David V is not going to let DeVries take a free kick.
It's not a negotiation.
He needs to watch more MAC games, I think is what everyone's saying out there right now.
I think it would be better. They would be better served, each of them, to go in the box and try to get on the end of one of those because, coaches and GMs want to know that this guy can be a target on restarts. And, again, I'm going to borrow Alexi Lawless. Set pieces, set pieces, set pieces. You have to have defenders who can go up there and be dangerous, especially in tight games at the end of the season in the playoffs.
Apparently,
there's another nice move from Colton Storm.
Apparently, we've been joined by Alexi Lawless on this podcast.
I was going to say, Alexi's probably in L.A. We could give him a call. We could get you out of the booth.
He's on a retreat with the rest of the Fox Soccer Brain Trust.
I mentioned Ziggy Schmidt coming up in the second half. Peter Walton joining us, a few other people roving around the StubHub hallways that I might be able to convince to come in and talk to Andrew for a couple minutes. Of course, standing at a distance if they can. Coming up in the second half, Andrew, you'll have plenty of time to talk about them. But, Doyle, I'd like to ask you a few guys that will come on the field here for Team Chaos. Michael DeGraffenreich, Nick Depew, Billy McConnell, Robbie Sagel, Eddie Sanchez, Tanner Thompson, Chris Weehan. Which of those players stood out to you day one? Which of those players are you keyed in on or are you hearing about for this day?
Well, honestly, none of them stood out for a good reason on day one. Team Chaos was chaotic.
Got one in.
That's going right back to the well.
I think literally everybody in orange needs to show well because they were so poor on Sunday. Of that list, I think Depew is the one who had the highest profile heading into this camp. And I think he has good feet. I think he has good instincts. I think he needs to show that he can, hopefully he'll go up against Abu Bakar in the second half, and we could take a look at and see how he does.
Suhaib Deflawi was the player who came out a few minutes ago for Lindo Mafeka to check in. Mafeka at the University of South Florida. One of three South Florida Bulls on this roster. Dom Dwyer, the big name coming out of South Florida.
Do we think maybe that coaches had seen enough of Deflawi? Because he was not passing that ball.
No, Deflawi here on loan, or an opportunity to trial from FC Northland, where he made his pro debut at 17. He played against one of his favorite teams in FC Copenhagen. His family, soccer blood. His uncles played professionally in Tunisia. His dad played as a defender at times in Tunisia in lower division in France. We saw great work on the ball from him, but as you said, not a lot of passing. He comes out. We saw in day one, players do have the opportunity to come back in. Coaches allowed to move things around, but Doyle, a lot of coaches out around the stadium that have been talking to these coaches saying, hey, we want to see this guy here for multiple reasons. One, to hide a pick that they think they like, or to see a guy and see if they want to pick him up.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what Ziggy was saying the other day, is there's a little bit of gamesmanship. And I forget who it was on Twitter, but they reminded me of, in I think the 2001 or 2002 Combine, Ziggy was coaching one of the teams and had a young American attacker by the name of Taylor Twellman. And Ziggy played him at right back in the hopes that everybody would think that this guy is some terrible right back and he wouldn't get picked. Of course, it didn't turn out that way. I think Taylor went second overall in that draft, ended up scoring 101 goals for the Revs.
You got a question. What type of right back, though, would Taylor Twellman have been? Guy would have won a lot of aerials.
I think a bad one. I'll go upstairs. He's right upstairs. I'll ask him at halftime what kind of right back he would have been.
Well, he's a forward, so he'll say bad because he doesn't want to play it, as we all know. Ball knocked around the back. Lalas Abubakar, one of the players who has been a big talking point throughout this, coming in, projected as a top 15 pick, maybe moved himself into the top 10 in day one. As Nanko cuts in field, it's taken away finally by Mafeka, and then blocked away. Now Lindo Mafeka with open space to dribble into. Cicerone makes the run off him, and it's tackled away by Cutler. Cutler, you mentioned, Doyle, coming in as a forward. Andrew playing in central midfield. What do you think of his performance so far?
Quiet, but he's been in the right place to make a couple plays like that. Hasn't.
Regis charging into the box now. He cuts it back just past Jorge Gomez Sanchez. Comes in field, the left-footed shot saved by McGuire, and the second chance by Nanko. He can't direct it on goal, and that'll be the end of our first half here of the first game. Team Chaos in orange, Team Copa in blue, tied at 0-0. And these two teams going after each other. This final opportunity, Andrew. Gomez Sanchez cuts in field. Shooting opportunity. McGuire makes just enough of the save.
Yeah, good save by him in traffic there, although it was right at him. But you look at him, maybe a deflection, but to stand it up, get it down, keep it out. Nanko probably went better, but he was offside on the play anyway.
Both Nanko and Gomez Sanchez were, I think, pretty active in that first half. And I think that both of those guys helped themselves. Nanko a couple of times, though, when he was out on the wing, he had a chance to make a play and maybe release a guy, didn't see the runner. Gomez Sanchez, to me, looks like a pure forward, a pure, ride the offside line type of number 9.
So this Team Copa team and Team Chaos, both of them we mentioned, a loss early on, and we talked about for Team Chaos, you don't want to see a blowout because you want to see these two teams be competitive. We've seen that more. Andrew, we talked about seeing guys in different situations, seeing guys maybe just be gamers in tough situations. I think Colton Storm's the one that stood out in this one, now coming in an even game, showing what he can do bombing forward from that right back position.
Yeah, this game has been open at times, and so you've seen a lot of opportunities to look at defensive positioning, 1v1 battles. I just think the decision-making for both teams in that attacking area of the field hasn't quite been good enough. And if we start to see a little bit better passing, a little bit better balls and runs combinations there, we may see a little bit more to evaluate. But you look down here for the guys warming up. The one guy I'm looking at right now is Brian Wright, talking about riding the line, a center forward who maybe will play wing in MLS. He had a little bit of a quiet day one. Let's see what he can do in day 2.
And we have Ja'Cory Hayes, another big player, coming on. But let's look at what we saw here in this first half between Team Chaos and Team Copa. 0-0 coming out here to open up the day's proceeding at the StubHub Center. The team in orange, though, going down early in the last game, and Nathan Regis giving them a chance early on, Doyle, in this one.
Yeah, it was an audacious little attempt from there. I'm with you, though, Weeby. I would rather have seen him try to drive forward a little bit, maybe beat a defender and get a better look. Of course, if he scores that goal, we will shut up, right?
Yeah, here's Nanko cutting inside as well. And this was another little combination play from Regis. And got good contact there, but there's McGuire again. He hasn't been forced to go to his left or right on these chances, but to stand up big, to keep it in front of him, a good save there. Now, Regis, you can see on his leg, there is a little bit of bandaging. So in the first half, we have wondered maybe why hasn't taken on players more, maybe a little less active. He's a guy maybe dealing with some injuries still.
The final opportunity here, Jorge Gomez Sanchez out of Temple, who was one of the leading scorers the last 2 years in college soccer, scored in his first game here at the SuperDraft Combine. Not able to get that chance go down. We'll be back in a few minutes here on MLSsoccer.com alongside Siggy Schmidt, bringing you the second half of action here between Team Chaos and Team Copa on MLSsoccer.com. David Goss back here alongside Andrew Wiebe and now Ziggy Schmidt here for the second half of the first game of the second day of the 2017 MLS Player Combine. Team Chaos against Team Copa. A number of changes made, and we'll get them all to you. Ziggy Schmidt, though, thank you so much for joining us once again. For me and Andrew to pick your brain and for you to enlighten us about what you've seen. Let's start quickly, though. First half of action, what stood out for you? What did you like or not like? Different from the first day or a continuation?
Well, obviously, certain players, showed different things. I thought Oduro was really solid in the first half. First team was really steady in defensive midfield. Reed showed exactly how young he is, and that's what young players do. They give you glimpses. They have some good games. They have some bad games. The overall level of the passing was a little better because the energy level's a little bit down. So they're thinking a little bit more, and they're putting less physical characteristics into it. Some guys struggled, who didn't struggle the first day. So it really clarifies things.
Brandon Aubrey's a guy that we talked a lot about in day one, and he had a tough first half for Team Chaos. Did you see anything different from him today? Did he improve his stock at all?
Yeah, I think he was steadier today, but then on the other hand, he didn't get tested today. Mm-hmm. Reed didn't do much, and so afterwards they switched around and they brought Cicerone into the middle. He wasn't all that active, so he had an easy day. And when the game's in front of him, he's very good and he's very steady. The question is still, how does he do when you've got guys making those diagonal runs behind you?
A number of changes for these teams. Brandon Aubrey, one of the players coming off the field. Robbie Sagal going in at center back. You mentioned some of the changes in energy levels, Ziggy. In general, day one to day two, what does day two of Combine normally mean? What do you normally look for? See, different, focus?
Well, you see guys, you see a little bit more in the second day, their thought process. I'll take a player as an example, the kid from UConn, is it a pronounced Awoa in midfield. There was more time and space in midfield today. He got the ball more, but then some of his decisions were just not good. I mean, he's floating balls, trying to hit guys in wide positions. They get cut out all the time. So what you really see is their thinking process and their ability to technically execute passes when they have a little bit of time and space.
So Nanko remaining in for the second half of this one. Colton Storm getting moved from right back to left back as he gets on the ball there. Tanner Thompson, an addition in midfield, in that central midfield, alongside Chris Wehan. Evan Pankin will remain in. He'll push out to wide right, and up top, Eddie Sanchez coming in for Gomez Sanchez, and Nick Depew coming back on after starting the last game in place of Nathan Regis. Depew, the big forward up top that had a lot of talk out of UCSB. Storm turns over. And now Storm going backfield. And he's able to get the clearance away. So Wehan will partner Thompson in midfield. He plays it down the wing. Nanko, one of the players that we thought stood out in that first half, pressuring there with Abu Bakar. Abu Bakar to get it up the line to his teammate in Jones. Ja'Cory Hayes now pushes it wide to Nazim Bartman, who came off the bench. Brian Wright, Ja'Cory Hayes, Nazim Bartman, Marcus Epps coming on for the second half for Team Copa, as does Iman Mafi at left back. Dominic Oduro in central midfield once again. A chance here, pushing up the line for Team Chaos, and Abu Bakar sweeps that one away. Bartman watches it go out. Oduro down here, Ziggy. He played at right back last game. The youth international out of Ghana playing in central midfield today. What did you see from him?
Much better today in central midfield. I think his vision's been really good. He's aware of what's going on around him. It's the second time he's been down today. I think he knocked heads a little bit earlier in the first half. So I'm not quite sure what it is now, but I think he's been solid. Abu Bakar, I think, as well, has had a good game defensively, but he's also shown today a little bit his limitations on the ball. Again, as you get more time and space in the second day, now it's more about your technical execution. So they've been there.
Depew has an opportunity now going against Abu Bakar to show maybe a little bit more than he did in day one. As we talked about, team's not quite sure what position he'll play. If he wants to be in that center forward role, he needs to show an ability to hold the ball up, certainly against a physical presence like Abu Bakar, but also get in dangerous positions and test the goalkeeper. We didn't see much of that from him in day one.
Oduro coming off with the trainer here. We'll see if he's able to continue. Kwame Owuwa down on the sideline with Boa Shoni, the head coach of this Team Copa side. And we'll see if Owuwa is getting ready to come on, and team players, of course, allowed to return as substitutes, and it looks like the substitution will be made in place of Oduro. For these young players, these youth internationals, Ziggy, that there isn't really a lot of tape on or coaches in MLS haven't prepared for. You come to Combine, what are you trying to find from them? What are you able to take away from these 2 or 3 performances?
Again, you're trying to find somebody who's got a little bit of something special, something that sets them apart. So far, none of them have really shown that to me. The closest one has really been Oduro today with his steady play in the middle of midfield. So hopefully he'll get another opportunity in the last game. Games.
Storm looking to switch the field. It's intercepted. Now Brian Wright going up that left sideline. The Canadian senior. He lays it into the path of Bartman. And Bartman's cutback is knocked away by Sagal. And out for a corner kick. And it looks like Ja'Cory Hayes is going to head over. Ja'Cory Hayes going to the College Cup and winning the championship. Losing in the championship with Wake Forest. Alongside Ian Harkes in that midfield, one of the best midfields in the country for the Demon Deacons. Hayes now trying to make his name at the next level. The right-footed corner kick will come from him. He floats it in towards the far post. It's knocked away from Rimstad. And it rolls out for another corner kick opportunity. That's Depew with the defensive header. And now Owuwa will go over and take the service.
Just to go back to what set up these set-piece situations here from the corners, you saw Colton Storm try to switch the field. And already in the first couple minutes after being moved to left back, you can see he's pretty right-foot dominant. He wants to be on that right foot. That was not a wise pass.
Left-footed service curled in. The header won by Abu Bakar and just wide. See, we talked in the first game. You came in and you said Abu Bakar, he smells like a defender to you. He looks like a true defender. Now, shaky on the ball, but we know athleticism you can't teach. Other things you can. What's going to be the view of a player like that in that position? Maybe struggling at times, but also showing his dominance at other times after a day like this.
I think he's definitely a player that as a coach at a team in this league, you say, hey, there's a guy I wouldn't mind taking a chance at. Obviously, he counts as a foreign player, but probably because of his shakiness on the ball, you don't see him as an immediate starter. He's the kind of guy that you're hoping that, 3-4 months of training, work with the ball, will improve that aspect of his game. But his athleticism on defense, his ability to win balls are there. And to a certain extent, he's not much different than the player Columbus signed, Mensah, the other Ghanan, because he's athletically very similar. And Mensah, I think people will see in the league, he'll make some dodgy decisions on the ball.
Depew getting a chance on goal there.
Siggy, when you're looking at a prospect like this, and we know that most, if not all, SuperDraft prospects are imperfect in some way, and that's just general. That's player by player across the league, across most leagues. You get them into your system. How do you go about improving some of these things that you've identified as weak points? How much time do coaching staffs actually have to do that 1v1, teaching and improvement side?
Well, you definitely spend some time on it. You spend time on it as a coaching staff. The assistant coaches spend time on it. You really drill into the players the importance of the warm-up exercises for them, especially if they're technically not very good. And then, if you have a good hierarchy and a good character and culture within your club, you'll have some older players that would also take stock. I mean, a good example when I was in Seattle was Gonzalo Pineda basically took Roldan under his wing and would work with Roldan after almost every practice, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And so when you have a good pro and you got a good culture in your club, that's another way you get young players to grow.
U.S. camp starting just across the street as players come in today. The first one under Bruce Arena. Siggy, I got to ask you, everyone's talking about Roldan as one of the players that maybe should have gotten a chance. Should he have been called up into this camp? As that shot's pulled wide from Mafeka.
Did he get called up?
No.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. I thought something changed and somebody was out injured. No, I think Christian will wait a bit his time. Ja'Cory Hayes, as example here, is a good comparison to Christian, where where Christian did not have a good combine, but because we knew about him, we ended up drafting him anyway. Ja'Cory Hayes so far has not had a good combine, but anybody that's seen Wake play on a consistent basis has a better realization of what he can do. So you can't put your complete stock in what they're doing over these 2-3 days.
I still remember, Siggy, that draft with Roldan dropping, everybody saying, oh, man, what's the good deal here? Why is this guy dropping? You guys make the pick, and I remember distinctly looking over the table, a lot of smiles, a lot of handshakes. That was a big moment for the club.
Definitely. Great kid, though. That's what we knew about him.
Where do you see Hayes project position-wise at that next level? Because he was played in the last game as the deepest midfielder. He played a little bit farther forward, but still centrally most of the time for Wake. Where do you see him as a player?
I think he's got to play on the flank a little bit on the wing. He probably might not have enough to play as an attacking midfielder. A little bit of comparison maybe to Marlon Hairston, at Colorado, where, athletically he's pretty good. He's pretty clever on the ball. But I think in a flank position is probably where he'll get his first real minutes in MLS.
Important to remember for those of you listening out there, Marlon Hairston didn't jump into that lineup in Colorado right away. Spent some time on loan, went down to USL, got seasoned a little bit, and then had a breakout season this year. A big piece of that team as they go forward.
Epps coming back and picking up the ball. David Goss, Andrew Wiebe, Ziggy Schmidt here. What's your last name? Sorry.
Wiebe. Yeah, that's it.
Ziggy Schmidt here
Wiebe works.
on MLSsoccer.com. The second half, our first game of the day, we'll be bringing you both games head-to-head as Marcus Epps gets into the box, just touched by the goalkeeper, and finally put home. Nazim Bartman at the University of South Florida, the South African, gets his first goal of the competition, and Team Copa takes a 1-0 lead, our first goal of the day.
Very nearly a great save there. He did tip the ball. Unfortunately, just couldn't keep it out. And you see it there, that tip as it comes across the goal, and a little bit of a bobbled finish, but they all count. You like that pass to get in behind, and then you like Epps with a nice service here. Brian Wright thought he was going to be on the end of that. Thought he was going to have his moment of glory. Just a little tip keeping it from him.
Robert Movis in goal, the German out of Duke.
Bartman in the 57th
With a good performance
minute.
on the first day. Would have liked to get just an inch more of a touch on that one as it goes in. Nazim Bartman able to put that one home. Bartman, remember, stepping up to the penalty kick on the first day and wasn't able to put his opportunity home, put it in the stands behind the goal. Here at the StubHub Center, the LA Galaxy, our gracious hosts.
The assist coming on that goal from Epps. I mean, Epps is one of those players that, I knew a little less about going into this combine, but for me, he's really caught my eye. I think he's done some really good things. That was a really solid run, but his decision on the pass and the quality of the pass was very, very good. I mean, he's been a guy I've been pleasantly surprised by.
Mafi's cross is blocked, putting the pressure on deep in that corner on Pankin. And Team Chaos trying to clear it out finally. Michael DeGraffenreich, right, number 81, in at center back for Team Chaos in orange, alongside in the second half, Robbie Sagel. Now, Team Chaos pushing forward. Chris Wehan out wide to Nanko. Nanko curls a shot. It's blocked, and then it hits off the crossbar, pushed away by McGuire. Second chance coming here for Chaos. Pankin trying to get to the end line. He does, and no one gets a touch on it, and now Epps will look to go the other way.
Nice little build-up play from them, and the timing to come through, the decision-making, that's what you're looking for in those moments in the final third. Can you see the pass, and do you have the timing and do you have the technical ability to make the pass at the right time so that your teammate's in a position to do something special? Right off the bar there from Nanko, a very good opportunity for Team Chaos.
And you have to say, good work from McGuire to scramble back off the crossbar and just get a touch on that ball, not allow a tap-in on an open net.
McGuire's done well. He's had a couple of good saves in game one as well.
How tough is it to judge goalkeepers? Because
I think it's harder when you only have the games. I really think they got to put the goalkeepers through a training session. I think only in the training session can you really identify things like their hands, etc.
Wright trying to find Hayes' feet and cleared away by Sagel. Do you, as coaches, go to training at Combine between these teams?
A lot of times you're not in on the days where they train. It used to be that they would put the goalkeepers through a training session and you could observe that, or at least send your goalkeeper coach to observe it. I don't know if they're doing that this year. That was one of the things I always fought for, and sometimes I'd get overruled on that. But, in the game, you never know. A goalkeeper can play the whole game and never get tested, so you really don't know what he's got. So sometimes you almost got to, come and watch them warm up.
How much do you put into college coaches and their own coaches and opponents? How much talk do you do with the guys that watch these guys week to week and saw them in training day to day? How much credence do that give?
I think you definitely talk to college coaches, and at the end of the day, you sort of build up a network. I knew who the college coaches I could talk to, who I felt I'd get a very honest, very true evaluation. And then there's other guys, unfortunately, who always blow a little bit of smoke and overrate their own players, so you've got to put less stock in that. But you definitely build up a good network, and there's definitely guys you can talk to.
Jones's cross clearance blocked off Nanko as Team Chaos tries to pinch in and get an equalizer. Ziggy, you wrote a piece for MLSsoccer.com about some changes you'd like to see to college soccer. You've worked in the system, and now you've taken players out of it and, of course, scouted it consistently as Sanchez's shot is blocked. Over the last few years, I advise everyone to go to MLSsoccer.com's homepage and check that article out. But we'd like to talk to you a little bit about college soccer and where it's come and the level of play and how maybe ready players are professionally, and what are those keys that you'd like to see them be able to learn at that stage to be ready to go to Major League Soccer.
Yeah, well, obviously the big thing is the thing that the college coaches are working on already. Sasha Karofsky and many other people are working on trying to make it basically a year-round season, a split season. But the other big change that has to happen is just a substitution pattern. And even coaches themselves, without a rule change, can do that. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's all about winning. And so coach says, if I'm not subbing people in and out and another team is, then are they getting an advantage? But players have to learn how to be able to pace themselves through a game, make decisions when they're tired, because that's what's going to happen to them at the next level. And that's something that's got to improve. And you got to get players to play more on their own. That's something all the way through our youth development. It's too often that players only play during organized practices.
How do you change something like that? How do you get players to do things on their own?
That's got to start at a young age. You've got to enjoy playing. When I was a youngster growing up, you knew exactly where you could go on certain days to get a game or to find guys to play. And that's something that doesn't exist as much now anymore, a little bit because of the change in society. So what you need to do as a coach is you need to create 5-on-5, 6-on-6 games within your practice where you're not coaching and where you're letting them coach themselves and play themselves.
Depew getting this pass in front of Abu Bakar. That was Brian Wright, the Canadian forward for Team Copa in blue, going left to right, creating that last opportunity for his team. Team Chaos in orange. Going right to left, Robert Movis in goal, making a couple moves here in the second half. Billy McConnell at right back, a center back partnership, brand new for this second half of Michael DeGraffenreich, as well as Robbie Sagel at left back. Colton Storm shifting to the opposite side of the field. Tanner Thompson and Chris Wehan in central midfield. That's Evan Pankin over to defend there. Number 86 in orange, and Chris Nanko staying in at left midfield. Up top for the team in orange, Nick Depew, the big man, 6'5", and below him, Eddie Sanchez here, putting some pressure on the ball. He had an assist in the last game on the lone goal for Team Chaos. On the other side in blue, for Team Copa going left to right. That's Jake McGuire out of Tulsa with the long clearance. Aaron Jones at right back. Lalas Abubakar, Joe Rimstad in center back. And out left, Iman Mafi. This, Marcus Epps on the ball, one of the South Florida Bulls on the field. Lindo Mafeka here, number 53. And Nazim Bartman, the lone goal in this one, number 52, making the run on that far post. Ja'Cory Hayes and Kwame Awua joining them in the midfield. And up top, Brian Wright out of the University of Vermont and Brampton, Ontario. Mafi trying to create for his team, and it gets taken away.
The big name, of course, everybody wants to see is Jeremy Ebobisse, but it's not likely we'll see him here, and it doesn't appear to be an injury issue. He arrived recently, but a lot of times, as Doyle said, the top picks or the players that are rumored to be the top picks don't appear in these games, both to prevent injury, but also because there's a little gamesmanship on the other side by the agent in many cases.
It could be gamesmanship there by the agent. It could be A team that's thinking about drafting him early may be working a little bit in cahoots with the agent and saying, hey, he's not healthy. I mean, a long time ago when there was only an indoor league, I had one of my players get picked for the All-Star game, and I told him it's probably a good idea if you don't go because it's not going to improve your draft status, and so you just stay. So he still got picked third in the draft. It was good. A buddy of his went in his place, and the guy wasn't even recognized. He ended up getting picked sixth in the draft, so it worked out for him too.
How have you seen the landscape of the way players come through in terms of agents, talking to MLS teams trying to communicate, make signings? How have you seen that change in U.S. soccer, especially around this draft system, but just in general over the last few years?
Well, it's definitely changed a lot of times. I would say if you go back like 10 years, as you came to this sort of an event, a lot of times 50% of the players or more didn't have agents. It was only maybe the top 20% or so that did. Now it's probably only 20% that don't have an agent. So that part of it's definitely changed, and it helps the player because certainly the agent, part of his job is to get people to become aware of his guy.
Epps making the run down the right side. He curls that cross in. Movis able to control this one easily.
Somebody needs to run near post on that.
Now Pankin going back the other way. As Team Copa, like Ziggy said, not taking advantage of that opportunity, and Team Chaos making the turnover. The sun peeking out here at StubHub Center in Carson, California. It rained heavy at times throughout the morning, but perfect conditions for us to play in on the second day of Combine coverage. MLSsoccer.com, your home for all your coverage of the 2017 MLS Player Combine. And, of course, the SuperDraft coming up on Friday, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Streamed live on MLSsoccer.com. Ziggy Schmidt, Matt Doyle, Andrew Wiebe, and a host of other people will come and join you, explaining what your team's needs, what your team's getting, and introducing you to a host of these players for the first time with their Major League Soccer side.
Remember, for you people from the East Coast, that heavy rain is Southern California heavy rain, which is probably a quarter of an inch.
It was massive flooding through drizzling throughout the morning. Sanchez with the cross.
That's because there's a lot of concrete.
The beautiful green that is the concrete of L.A. You, of course, can also go on to MLSsoccer.com, get Extra Time Radio from yesterday. We talked all about the potential moves coming up in Major League Soccer, as well as what we saw in day one of the Combine, what we're hearing around Sam Stejskal with all the best coverage, leaking out all of the secrets. Adam Schefter, of course, of Major League Soccer, as everyone knows him. Cross comes in for Team Chaos, and it's knocked away. And then Thursday, you'll have an ETR full SuperDraft preview. So plenty of content to consume for everyone out there. Sanchez trying to turn and find some space. Cross played in. Depew attacks. He wins the initial header but can't put it on frame, and it rolls out.
Looks like a deflection there off Lawless Abubakar, but that's what you want to see from Depew. Get in front of players, get his head on the ball, anticipate service. Those are the things teams will want to see from him in that center forward role.
But he's got to get that on frame though. You know, a big guy. That's what he lives and dies for, and that's what he's going to get paid money for. So that's something he's got to put on frame. He's not going to get 5 of those kind of chances a game.
Although, Ziggy, that may not be what he gets paid for, as he has played center back. He has played in center midfield. We talked about it a little bit in the last game. Have you heard anything or changed any opinion? Where do you see him either at 6'5", center forward, center back at the next level?
He might have to have a meeting with Eric Zavaleta and ask him what he thinks, because he's probably the best one to give him advice. Hard for me to say at the end of the day. I still think he might be better as a defender. But that's just my opinion, and, everybody else might have a different opinion.
Epps lays that one off. Now Storm trying to get away from trouble. A number of blue Team Copa jerseys around him.
Now you see why Storm doesn't use that left foot.
Yep, that left foot's not there. It's a little bit of an experiment this half just to see where he's able to play, and it looks like right back's going to be that position of choice for a lot of teams.
Aaron Jones will throw this one in. One of the many players here, Ziggy, that have shown well but are an international player, and the conversation with coaches with those players about what they think's going to come up, how much harder does that make it to try and draft them?
It makes it difficult. I was talking to a coach this morning, and he's like saying, why I'd rather draft a 21, 22-year-old American and work with him than a 21, 22-year-old Trinidadian or some other foreign national and work with him, because we're also about developing American players. So I think we got to think about that at some stage also.
And, of course, Canadian players too, GA. Canadian players coming up, and, of course, the coaches here. A lot of talking going on, a lot of changes in Major League Soccer. One of the new names, head coach, although someone who knows the league very well, Wilmer Cabrera, you see with the Houston Dynamo in the middle of your screen, Columbus Crew SC alongside them. Wilmer Cabrera, Ziggy, making a lot of moves coming into this season, a lot of CONCACAF moves, something that we've discussed at Major League Soccer. A lot of players from Honduras, Costa Rica, areas like that. What do you think about the changes that are coming in, and what do you know about him as a coach?
Well, obviously Wilmer had to go here. He was an assistant. Had to go here with Chivas USA when they were here, and was an assistant coach to Oscar Pareja in Colorado. So Wilmer knows the league. He's relied on his connections in Colombia to make some of the additions that he's made, but also the proximity to Houston. It's easier for Houston to get to Honduras than it is to get to Seattle. So there's a proximity there. You can observe players. I think they've made some pretty clever pickups. And they were a team that really didn't have a lot of foreign players to begin with, so it hasn't become an overbearing amount for them.
And we're seeing a little bit of a shift there because the players like Will Bruin and the likes and Giles Barnes for a few years have been kind of the crux of that attack. That looks like it's going to change. Alberth Elise is a guy that I think ETR-wise we really, really like that player. And the last couple of years we've been advocating, let's say, for him to come to Major League Soccer. Begging might be a better phrase for that. But you look at a Juan David Cabezas, and they needed a central midfielder they think that could win balls. He's that guy on loan. Romel Kyoto, who's also a Honduran international coming in. Leonardo from the LA Galaxy and at center back. So making some changes there. You still have the crux of that roster. Then Dylan Remick, a guy that you're familiar with there, is left back. Probably more of a depth pick there, but certainly those are players you'll need to get through that season.
No, and those are good pickups. Kyoto is, I think, a very good player. People are going to see that in this league. You can go at people 1v1, and then Ellis is a guy, and Kyoto are guys I'm familiar with when we played against Olympia, and those were guys that I was impressed with.
Houston Dynamo trying to turn things around after a tough season once again last year, but of course great pedigree down there in their history. Oof. Great work here from Bartman. He's able to get by one defender and then sees it roll out. Team Copa leading Team Chaos here 1-0 as we come down to the final 15 or so minutes of this first game of the day. Now, don't forget, Team Control and Team Tango will face off immediately after this. That one's streaming live as well on MLSsoccer.com. Some big players that people are looking out for in that one. Zico Lewis scoring a goal in the last game. Eric Klonovsky, one of the highest-rated goalkeepers. And, of course, Abu Dunladi and Brant Bronico, who both had big games in the first day of play. Team Control there.
Daniel Johnson will come off the bench from Team Control, a guy who was really the standout player of day one here at the Combine. And Jackson Yu as well will come off the bench. So two guys to watch, as well as Julian Gressel.
Ziggy, we're here to watch this Combine, but a lot of other things happening around here. And one of the things we talked about in the first half was we talked with Peter Walton, VAR, video assistant referees, video replay assistants, was what we discussed about. They are doing a live test here. I got to get your thoughts. Ziggy, what do you think about the addition of VAR, the way it's gone about, but what do you think about that addition to the game of soccer?
I think it's good. I think it's taken soccer too long to move in that direction. Obviously other sports have done it before. Maybe other sports they feel are more conducive. But when you're looking at the plays that they want to look at, generally when there's a red card, there's a penalty kick, there's things like that. There's always a stoppage of play, so there's enough time that you can get a quick resolution to the question or the issue. And I think it's a good step forward. I think more calls we get right just make it a better sport.
Now, refereeing is always on the minds of coaches and fans and players and everyone else, and there will be complaints. There's no doubt about that. How have you seen the state of refereeing in MLS change over the years?
I'm one of the guys who I think it's become a little better. It's improving some. There was a big turnover in referees where they brought a lot of inexperienced younger referees in about 3 years ago, so they're now becoming a little more reliable, a little more consistent. But it's still a situation where sometimes I don't know if the referees have enough of a feel for the game. Either maybe it's because they haven't played enough when they were growing up themselves, or whatever the reasons may be, and it becomes too much of are you doing it mechanically properly, or are you making the right call? But I think that's something Peter Walton continues to work on, and I think it is something getting better.
Well, a lot of changes coming. We heard from him in 2017 for Pro. You can go back to that first half if you want to and listen to some of it, and you can go to MLSsoccer.com, of course, for all your coverage of that, alongside the Combine and the SuperDraft, player moves, rumors, free agency, and the likes, as Epps is able to keep this one in field. Epps going down that right wing, plays it into the path of Brian Wright. One-on-one with Sagal. He lays it for Epps and worked off by DeGraff and Wright and picked up by Moves. But I think Epps, you mentioned, was one of the bright pieces of this game so far.
No, definitely like Ebbs. I mean, he continues to surprise me sometimes with his ball control, keeping that ball in on the sideline there. And I think yesterday he pulled off a little move on the touchline as well, where he beat a guy and nutmegged the player. But he definitely shows those skills. But whenever I watch the big guy up front, though, whenever I watch Wright, I have these visions of Bright DK. It just reminds me a lot of him.
A big burly forward that was in Major League Soccer for a while. Brian Wright, one of the seniors already signed to a contract. We'll see Julian Gressel and Zico Lewis, who have been signed in the next game. Brandon Aubrey, we saw in the first half. Ziggy, Aubrey had a tough game, the first game for Team Chaos, the center back out of Notre Dame. What did you see from him today?
I thought his game today was better. It was a little easier for him because Copa didn't get a lot of pressure on them, Team Copa. And when the game's in front of him, I think he's very good, and he makes very good decisions. The key question still remains, how's he going to do when he faces aggressive forwards who make good diagonal runs?
Is that instinct? Is that, physical capability? What makes you able to deal with those sorts of runs and those sorts of players?
Well, a lot of it is instinct, anticipation, getting into those spaces. People think it's always and only or mainly predicated by speed. Obviously, speed and athleticism can help you, but what I've always found in my years of coaching is the players who are very athletic and very fast and have good speed usually tactically are not as sharp as the other guys. And when you don't have as much speed, as much athleticism, tactically you make better decisions because you know you don't have the speed to make up for a mistake. So it's anticipating that run, knowing when to step up and leave them offside, knowing when to anticipate the pass.
Now we're sitting here, Siggy, and we're watching these games along with 22 coaching staffs around Major League Soccer. And if you know events like these, you know that, we'll let Eddie Sanchez do his thing in the box.
Sanchez trying to lay it off, and it rolls over the end line.
You know that the heart of it oftentimes is that hotel bar. What's going on right now? What's the scene like for coaching staffs throughout the Combine? What are they talking about? What's being discussed? It's not just trades. There's more to it.
There's a lot to it. I mean, the scene in the bars used to be a little bit like the Star Wars bar. You sort of saw groups and people of the like kind sort of hanging together. But a lot of times you'll see the teams, sitting together. They're and you're trying to pump the other guys for information. You're trying to find out what you can. You're talking to agents, trying to pump them for information. What have they heard? Who do they hear is going to which team? What are the interests? You're talking to teams then about trades. You're trying to figure out, who's, are they willing to move? Is Minnesota willing to move off number one? Is Atlanta willing to move off number two? Which they probably are if the right deal is there, for them. So there's all those things that you're talking about and discussing, and then in between you have a beer or two.
Beer of choice, Siggy?
For me, I'm pretty simple.
Okay. Heineken, of course. MajorLeagueSoccer.com.
Heineken,
here.
Is that a sponsor?
Shout out to Heineken.
Yeah, okay. I know we used to have to say another beer, but I guess I'll go with Heineken, which is my assistant coach's favorite.
There you go. Set piece coming here. Tanner Thompson trying to take it quickly. You mentioned your assistant coach, and one of the stories that's been around here this draft is Jesse Marsch out in Austria, and so he's not here. What's the breakdown for you in terms of what each coach's responsibilities are at an event like this, in terms of do you trust players? assistant coaches scouting specific positions, specific styles? Or is it that one coach is your college soccer expert and one coach does this as Eddie Sanchez steps over this free kick to the far post taken by McGuire? How much responsibility does each person have? How do you break it up?
Well, I think teams now have either a chief scout or a scouting department, and I think it's important that you let your chief scout, who's been watching so many more college games than you have, really take the lead. But certainly I want more eyes. I want people's opinions. There's something that I might not see that somebody else sees. So the more opinions you have and the more views you have. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. When I was coaching at UCLA, I had a player who I played as a center back, and that's where I thought he should play. And he ended up playing club soccer on the outside, and that particular coach thought he was an attacking midfielder. And I liked what I saw from him. I played him at attacking midfielder the next year, and he had like 14 assists.
Sanchez here trying to lay it off and just too far.
What I'm trying to say by that is somebody's view is different, and it's good when you have different views. And I always tried to put a coaching staff together of guys with different backgrounds and different outlooks as a result of that.
Scouting has become a much more invested aspect of these teams' technical sides as the years have gone on and budgets have increased. What makes a good scout in MLS? What makes a good college scout?
Well, a good scout is, obviously you got to work. You got to do your homework. Nothing ever happens without that. But then, just like I said, over the years you develop a network, and there's, in my years, there's maybe 3 or 4 sets of eyes I would trust implicitly around the country. Anything else I would want to see myself. And so if you have a scout who's one of those sets of eyes that you really trust, that makes things a lot easier for you. So having somebody who's had some experience in picking players and selecting players in the past, is it a former pro player, somebody who's been on your staff before, somebody who's been in the college game, or somebody you think just has good eyes.
The rain beginning to fall here on StubHub Center Field in Carson, California. Brian Wright going by Sagal, tries to get the right-footed shot away, and it'll roll just wide. Just about 10 minutes left to play here in this first matchup of the day. Team Chaos versus Team Copa. Team Control versus Team Tango coming up in the second game. The armchair analyst will return to the booth. Ziggy Schmidt will split time with us. Once again, we appreciate you spending this time with us. One quick question for you, and Jeremy Ebobisse not playing in this game. We've heard that he will be the number 1 pick. You've had a situation, Steve Zakawani, guys that everyone knows are going to be the number 1 pick. What's the work like? What are you watching when it seems like there's an obvious guy on the top for situations like that?
Well, I think the other example is years and years ago when the Union had the first pick and Danny Mwanga didn't play in the draft because they were going to pick him number 1, and didn't turn out so good for him. I would prefer to see him play. I think he has a good reputation and people are aware of him, and so that team that says we're taking him with number 1, by having him not play, maybe it increases his trade value and somebody might bite on a trade for him.
Sanchez laying that one off. Thompson trying to work that one out of midfield, now charging forward. Jorge Gomez Sanchez, 1 goal to his name so far in the Combine. He's working one-on-one against Rimstad. Gets it to the feet of Depew. Depew's first touch off to the right. Now Thompson on the ball again. Tanner Thompson out of Indiana University trades it off. Gomez Sanchez's shot, and it's held by McGuire with some bodies around him. Final minutes here of this first game. Team Copa leading 1-0, a second-half goal by Nazim Bartman out of University of South Florida. Andrew, now a second day of play. You talked about more familiarity for these players, maybe a little bit less pressure in this second game, a little bit more comfort. Who's shined for you? Who's maybe redone what they did on the first game day or continued good form?
Well, we talked about Abubakar a lot, and he's had good moments, certainly, most of them on the defensive side. Those weren't the questions, I don't think, after day 1 with him. Epps is another guy that we've seen, but you see in certain situations, like in that recent build-up play from Team Chaos, that the chemistry's not there at times to see the real instincts of these guys. Give them a little time, give them a little practice time, give them some time together, you may see the best of them. But I thought it was interesting what Siggy said about Ebobisse and first-round picks, or first or overall picks that are rumored to be so, I should say. there's no way their stock is going up. Their stock is as high as it can be. So sometimes it's not just about stock going up, it's about stock going down. And that's just not for guys in the middle, it's guys for the top as well. So I think coaches look at this and they say, okay, we'll look at little situations, 1v1s. We'll look at some of that at agility. But we won't make huge game-changing decisions as it comes to our evaluation of players. A guy like Brian Wright, I would like to see him be a little bit cleaner in the final third. Here's where we're going to see him make a run.
Epps making the run down the right side. He gets the ball, trying to find Wright, but hands it off too simply for Robbie Sagal, and he clears that one away. The rain's starting to pour and come down here in Carson, California. I say pour lightly, as Ziggy Schmidt said. This Southern California pour.
I wouldn't want to be out in this. That's real rain.
And these players now will go on a second game coming up, and that will happen in the rain. Team Control versus Team Tango. A few changes to starting lineup, Ziggy. As you mentioned in day one, the coaches have a chance to communicate a little bit with the head coaches of these combine teams to move positions around, move some starting players around. Daniel Johnson, who was so good in day one, Jacob Nerwinski, and Jackson Ewell will come off the bench for Team Control, but Zico Lewis starting again, Napo Matsoso getting a start, and Wheeler Aminu out of Harvard, who is a player a lot of people like, all in the starting lineup for Team Control. On the flip side, Abu Danladi not getting a start. Who are you focused on in that second game? Who are the players that we need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, I definitely want to see Wheeler Aminu because I think he had a good had a good first game, and now it's a matter of what he's going to do in the second game. I would want to see Justin Schmidt, see him get a little tested. I mean, he's going to face Tucker Hume, which is just maybe a height thing, but see how he does there and matches up. Zico Lewis, I'm really interested in seeing play, see what he can do. Nico Hansen, can he come back with a better overall day than he had day one because he has ability and he has talent.
Brian Wright getting away. DeGraffenreich trying to recover, and Movis able to get out and take it off the feet, and Brian Wright down back behind the play as he goes over the top of Movis.
A long touch there, and he had to go over the top, as you said. It looked like maybe coming down on that angle there. Here he is, and yeah, the wrist maybe, or maybe just a little bit of pride. He's up, and he seems to be okay, moving that shoulder around a little bit as he recovers.
It was a heavy touch, but it also showed that he's not very comfortable going to his left foot.
So just a few minutes left here. Team Copa leading Team Chaos 1-0. The second day of the 2017 MLS Player Combine. As I mentioned, another game will stream on MLSsoccer.com right after this one. David Goss, Andrew Wiebe, and Ziggy Schmidt here for this one. Matt Doyle, the armchair analyst, will join us in the second game for that first half, as well as Nazim Bartman's shot gets blocked by DeGraffenreich. DeGraffenreich and Sagal having another chance themselves. As we mentioned, Team Chaos struggling at times in the first game. Ziggy, what have you seen from that pair of center backs in this second game? What did you see in the first half from DeFries alongside Aubrey?
Again, I thought they were solid in the first half. The game was in front of them, most of the time, so it was a lot easier for them. You can see definitely guys grow. I mean, Bartman's having a much better game at forward than he did in midfield in day one, so you can see players grow. As coaches on the second day, you're probably writing no to a couple of names. You're saying that's not somebody I'd pick at all, and you're going for sure on some other guys. So it really allows you to solidify things on day two.
Abu Bakar earning the foul ahead of Eddie Sanchez. And a free kick will go in favor of the blue team, Team Copa. Going forward in this one. Of course, in that second game, a lot of news coming out around Major League Soccer. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the draft status for these teams, what the needs are throughout that first round. Of course, Minnesota and Atlanta, the obvious ones on top. But Chicago Fire, Dynamo, Crew SC, the Earthquakes, there's big rumors around them making a DP move. But as Matt Doyle has said, they need to get younger. So this draft, an opportunity for them to maybe get some impact players. And we'll move on down the list. Rumors coming out today about potentially Sebastian Blanco heading to the Portland Timbers. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll maybe talk a little bit about beer or something else interesting as well.
Maybe Darwin Quintero.
Alongside these players. I think Rich and Wes Covina would love for us to talk about Darwin Quintero.
What's going to happen with Darwin Quintero? Where's he going to go?
They're talking San Jose right now. Possible arrival there.
I like him. we played against him enough times in Champions League. We played with him when he was at Santos and then at Club America. So
Thompson tries to drop this pass in. And now Bartman trying to work this ball back up the other way. It looks like it might be Team Copa with a 1-0 victory here on the second day. It was Nazim Bartman who got the goal. Epps setting it up down the right wing, playing that cross in off the hand of Movis. And Bartman on the far post, able to knock it home. The second game, we expect to see goals. Team Control and Team Tango, a combined 7 goals on the first day, so we'll see those two match up. Should be interesting to see the high attacking form of Team Control against the Generation Adidas center back in Miles Robinson on the red team, Team Tango. As the final few seconds are played here. And that called offside before the shot could get away. As the rain slows a little bit in the final few minutes. And that will be our final whistle here. So the first game of the second day completed here on MLSsoccer.com. Team Copa in blue with the 1-0 win over Team Chaos in
0.
orange. Final thoughts
Second
on this
match
one from you, Ziggy?
Team Control.
Again, a more relaxed game than in day 1.
Minutes.
You could see a lot more of the players' technical ability and their thinking process, so that's a good thing for coaches to see and helps you make that final evaluation process.
Andrew Wiebe, we talked about the players that you were focused on coming into this one. What did you see from those guys?
You know, Brandon Aubrey, as Siggy said, just didn't have a day in which he was tested much in those situations on the turn and behind that we really wanted to see him. Day 3 will be a big day for him as it pertains to that. I thought Adonijah Reed had a quiet day. We saw some good moments from him, especially when he was dropped back in that second forward role, but that wasn't the case today. Didn't get in space nearly as much. And Dominic Oduro, a guy that was a little bit quiet in day 1, seems to be that he was playing out of position. Defensive midfield, a much better spot for him. And Lawas Abubakar, a solid day, not a spectacular day. Still as a guy who stood out so far in this combine.
Let's look at the highlights of what we saw in this one. The orange team, Team Chaos, falling 1-0 to the blue team, Team Copa. We got it kicked off here. It was started in the sun, moved to the rain, and finished in the sun once again. Ziggy, Nathan Regis, a Division II big-time goal scorer with this shot here. What did you see from him?
Well, for sure that was his best effort in the game, and in that first half, he looked up, he saw that little bit of space, and almost chipped it into the far corner. Had some good moments. This little 1-2 here with Nanko, who was much better on the right than he was on the left. He had a better game than the other day, but still not enough where you'd say, okay, he's somebody you want.
Regis with this layoff. Nanko, the Syracuse alumni out of Canada, had his shot saved as it was Team Chaos pushing forward in the first half. Jorge Gomez-Sanchez with this chance at the final minute, and Jake McGuire did just enough, Wiebe, to keep his team tied 0-0 before in the second half they were able to break it open.
Yeah, and here's Nazim Bartman, and didn't quite get in, and he had a moment later on. A corner kick comes in here, and Abubakar wins the header. Couldn't put it on net for him, but here you see Epps get in behind, and you saw him understand where the space was. He gets in here, a good touch, gets his head up. That's a good ball there. He had Brian Wright set up, but Bartman with a nice little finish. A little bit of a bobble, but a goal's a goal.
Nazim Bartman, his first goal of the combine. He put the PK over in the last game, of course, so a better chance for him. This is the best chance of the game for the orange side. The shot blocked, rolled in front of the box, and then wiped away by Jake McGuire. So now we'll get ready for our second game in just a few moments on MLSsoccer.com. We'll be streaming it. It'll be red versus white, Team Control versus Team Tango. For David Goss, Andrew Wiebe, Ziggy Schmidt, Matt Doyle, we look forward to talking to you in a few minutes.